Welcome to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Suzy Vidori, where I teach you the tried and true secrets to writing fiction, nonfiction, that are going to wow your readers, broken down step by step. We're going to explore writing techniques. I'm going to show you a glimpse behind the scenes of successful writers' careers that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. And I'm also going to coach writers live on their pages so that you can learn and transform your own storytelling. Whether you're just starting out, you're drafting your first book, you're editing, or you're currently rewriting that book, or maybe even your 10th book, this show's going to help you unlock the writing skills that you didn't even know you needed, but you definitely do. I'm so looking forward to helping you get your amazing ideas from your mind onto your pages in an exciting way for both you and your readers so that you can achieve your wildest writing dreams. And you're going to also have some fun doing it. Let's dive in.
Today, we're going to be chatting with a really special writer to me, Simon Rose. He was one of the very first professional authors that I met in the flesh, in person, because he was teaching at a local university and I took a creative writing course more than 15 years ago now. Simon became the very first editor that I worked with. And when I went back to, most of you have heard this story that I wrote the first draft or started the fountain on maternity leave with my third child, who's 14 now. When I went back to work after taking that creative writing course and after trying to finish that novel and realizing I didn't know what I was doing yet, Simon was actually my writing coach and he met with me. And if it wasn't for Simon, I probably never would have finished that book. So he holds a special place in my heart. Still a really great colleague and friend. We love to geek out about the science behind writing and talking about processes and everything going on in the industry. So I'm incredibly honored to have this conversation with him today. He has published more than 20 novels, actually 21 novels to be specific, for children and young adults, 8 guides for writers on how to write a book, more than 100 nonfiction books. Yes, you heard that right. More than 100 nonfiction books. And he has created many articles on a wide variety of topics. Simon is a writing instructor at the University of Calgary, which is where I first met him, and he has served as a writer in residence for the Canadian Authors Association. He provides editing and coaching services for writers in a wide range of genres, and you can find details of the references and recommendations regarding his work on his website, and the link to his website will be in the show notes. Simon also offers in-person and virtual programs for schools and libraries and offers a variety of online writing courses and workshops for both children and adults. He has extensive experience in writing for a wide range of industries and offers copywriting services to the business community. Simon is a stellar example about how to create an actual career out of writing, and I am super excited to have this conversation with him today and for you to hear all about it. Welcome to the show, Simon Rose. This has been a long time coming. So glad to have you here.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Suzy. I'm delighted to have been invited. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So there's so much that you can share. I know that you've been a huge mentor to me over the years as well, and I appreciate you so much. Today, we are going to talk about writing time travel as well as other topics, but let's start there. So you've written how many time travel novels? And they're for middle grade and lower YA and T, right?
I knew you'd ask me a question right away that would be difficult to answer because you're going to be asking me how many time travel novels.
How many fiction novels?
Novels, as in these, that with the 2 latest ones that came out, it's currently October of 2025. I've just released that I now have 21 novels, young adult, young adult middle grade novels. They're not all historical fiction and time travel, and things. Some of them are basic science fiction. I've got some paranormal ones in there as well, and things like that. But these latest 2 are don't involve time travel, but they involve what if and alternate history. So history certainly always seems to be in there somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right from middle grade to sort of young adult teen. What's the difference to you in when you choose an age group to write for?
Well, I think with the first ones, and it's a long time ago, I mean, we're in 2025 now. The first one, The Alchemist Portrait, came out way back in 2003. It's hard to believe, really. And that was written for 9 to 12s. So that was middle grades. The difference probably is, as well as with the word count, I suppose, is the danger level and how scary it is and things like that, and how dark it may seem in places and things. I mean, some of the more recent ones, including these latest ones, the Order of Excalibur books about the alternate history if Germany had conquered Britain during the war in 1940. I mean, this is a pretty dark time. And my Flashback series as well, which came out in 2015, that sort of era, paranormal, pretty dark too, a bit more scary, I suppose. That would be the difference for me.
Yeah, that's a huge difference in a consideration. And I love what you just said, the 2015 era. It's like, Simon, I just want to take a moment and just appreciate that you have eras in your life as a writer. And that is fantastic, because many people who are listening to this podcast are wanting to become professional writers or trying to figure out how to do that. You know, I love that it spans that amount of time. People who can do something for 20, 30 years are really impressive in my book, because you keep having to reinvent. Has publishing changed for you since the beginning? I mean, this is a huge question, and I know we could probably spend the entire podcast talking about that. But in terms of 2003, you said, how has that changed? Because you've been in, this has been in the fastest changing section, I would say, in publishing ever. How has it changed?
Well, I think I was very fortunate to find a publisher back in 2000. Well, the first book came out in 2003. And if someone was to ask me, and I fully had a conversation with you about this in recent memory as to, well, when did I first connect with the publisher? Because the book came out in, I think, April or May of 2003. But so I must have been in touch with the publisher maybe at least 18 months earlier, perhaps. And it was being edited, all the rest of it and things. But certainly it's changed. I mean, that particular publisher, I did 8 books with him over the course of up until 2014, I think. And I knew about self-publishing, and I knew that people did it on Amazon and everything else. But I wasn't really sure if I was confident enough if I could do self-publishing of fiction. I didn't really have the confidence. I don't know why. I had lots of ideas, and I'd pitched these particular stories to publishers before, and I had some interest and everything, but I thought, well, maybe I should do it myself. But I started off, I published this book on Amazon called The Children's Writer's Guide.
Yeah.
Which was basically made up of all the handouts I'd ever used in classes at the local University of Calgary, classes that were in-person classes that were writing for adults who wanted to write for children and teenagers. So I thought,
that's where I met you, right, Simon, in 20.
Yeah, well, I'll put them in a book, and put it on Amazon. And from that, I produced another few guides. I produced the Time Traveler's Guide, which was all about historical fiction and writing time, same sort of thing from all the handouts. Later on, more recently, that's about 5 years ago, I produced this book from handouts as well. I was so imaginative with the title, I decided to call it The Children's Writer's Guide 2. And I couldn't think of anything else to call it. But with that, but those came out, the Children's Writer's Guide, I think, was published in 2014, something like that. But then finally, once I'd grasped the nettle, as it were, with guides, I thought, you know what, I'm going to put a fiction book out. And I had this idea for this parallel universe thing called the Shadowzone series. And I did those on Amazon. And
but to be clear, you'd published many fiction books traditionally, but this was the first time that you had self-published.
Yeah, that was the first fiction one I'd done. Yes, I did that one in, I think it was 2015, and I put them all out in the same year. I think I might have even put them all out at the same time on Amazon. But 3 books. And then around the same time, I attracted the attention of another publisher with my first paranormal book, and we did 2 sequels of that. So how is it? I think the original question was, how has it changed?
How is it different? How has it changed, right? I mean, your career has certainly changed. And in 2003, self-published would have been in its infancy if it was even really a viable solution at the time.
Well, I think it was it probably was in its infancy, yes. And I think people, looked, a lot of people might have looked at self-publishing in a slightly different way and thought, oh, it wasn't quite real publishing or something
And
like
had a
that.
stigma to it.
That's the word. Yes. Well done. I needed a word there. Yes. Stigma.
Good with words. I like the words, Simon. Okay.
For that little thing. Yeah. I think maybe that was it. But I mean, if I look at, I have just published these books, the Order of Excalibur books. There's a book and a sequel about the alternate history of occupied Britain and everything. Got my copies from Amazon and everything to use at Christmas events or sell at Christmas events and sign and things. And I paid for a professional cover and all the rest of it. And looking at that and looking at my books about the English Civil War, which I put out during COVID and everything, the quality of the books, there's no difference, really. It's top. Well, I suppose you've got to pay for a decent cover, but I mean, the quality of the book is very good. Really, I think.
Yeah,
anyway.
your covers are actually stellar. They're so beautiful, and we'll put some links in the show notes so that people can go and take a look.
Oh, thank you.
So what is a time travel novel? So we've established like you do a lot of time travel novels, but you also have other genres. But what exactly is a time travel novel? How would you define it?
Well, I started off with the first one. It was a time travel. I've always liked. I should clarify. I was as you can tell from the accent, I wasn't born here in this country. I was born in the UK.
Were you born in this era, or have you time traveled, Simon?
That's true, isn't it? I could be a time traveler, couldn't I? But no, I was born in the UK, came to Canada in 1990, but I got my degree university degree in history with the intention perhaps of becoming a history teacher at a school and things. It never worked out that way, but I always had an interest in history and things. It was always my favorite subject and things like that. So I suppose I was always going to probably write. Once I started writing books and stories and things, those were the first ideas I had. I mean, I enjoyed science fiction growing up, Star Trek and space and all this sort of stuff. I must admit, I enjoyed all that, but I was never all that interested in writing about it. I enjoyed watching it. But it was always the time travel episodes in Star Trek, perhaps, that I was most interested in, and there were a few of those and everything. So I think with what is a time? Well, it's usually where somebody travels back in time from the present day, isn't it? I suppose.
Well, I guess that's my question, because it could be. So, are most of your books? I don't actually know the answer to this. I've read many of your books with my kids, but are most of your books traveling backward in time because you want to do historical, and do you also go into the future?
I've got one where somebody takes pictures of villain, takes pictures of the future to try and get rich. I think I should remember this. I haven't read it for a long time. It came out I don't know when it came out, 2010 maybe. And then I've got another one called Future Imperfect, where the lead characters are getting messages from the future on their phones. But most of the time, I've got characters that go back in time.
Yeah, because of your historical focus. That's the one.
Adventures and things, because I find I have to do research into, like anybody else would. I don't know everything about the past. It might be easier for me to do research than other people because I'm familiar with the era. But even I am not that. If I'm going back in time in a story and I'm writing about a particular setting, or so, like the Heretic's Tomb is a story I wrote about somebody. They go back in time to the time of the Black Death. Now, I know what the Black Death is and how it killed lots of people and everything, but what I wasn't that familiar with, I thought, well, what sort of medical treatment did they have? They didn't have. Obviously, they didn't have the same as we have today. And it wasn't all witchcraft and goodness knows what else, but they must have had something. And I had to do research.
Some idea how it was spreading, or some idea of how they treated one another.
And in some of these, so there was definitely research into that, and then there were other ones perhaps where I had people going back in time, and they're traveling around on horseback, maybe. And I'm not a horseback person in the modern day and things, so it's like, well, how do people, what did horseback riding look like, or how did they do that back in the day, and things like that, or battle scenes and weapons and all this sort of stuff had to be researched in these stories.
And you like the research?
I don't mind the research at all.
Wow.
Even this alternate history one, I had to do research into that because it's not that long ago. In some ways, it's not that long ago, World War II, but it is now. Of course, it's almost a century ago.
Thank you for writing what you write, Simon, because historical fiction is actually I say this all the time on the podcast, but it's actually my very favorite genre to read. I don't write historical fiction, of course, but because I like to do the research. Things up. I want to move it forward. I don't want to stop. I don't want to research, but thank you for doing it, because I actually really, really love to read it. And in fact, Simon, you were my very first writing coach. So I often talk about the fact that I wrote what later became The Fountain, the first draft on maternity leave with my third child, who's 14 now. What I don't talk about as often is how to go back to work after that maternity leave, and it wasn't done. And so Simon was my coach who held my feet to the fire, had the deadlines for me, and helped me finish that book. And one of the things, maybe you have a lot of stories to tell about me, Simon, I don't know. One of the things that was cool about The Fountain and the way that it's structured, because in it, 16-year-old Ava makes a wish that somebody had never existed and actually erase this time. And Simon, you had me treat that as if it were almost a time travel novel, which I'd never thought about before. There was a lot of structural things that you were able to show me that happened in a time travel novel that I had created by even though my people didn't actually travel in time, the wish traveled in time and rewrote history, right? So there was a lot of really cool things that you were able to teach me. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for writing The Fountain. I remember enjoying reading it at the time. Yes.
But a typical time travel doesn't happen like mine did. Some of the things that you taught me were about consistency and the idea that you can't change everything because you will completely confuse your reader. So just change a few things. And there was some really practical tips that you gave. So thank you for that. How do you start when you're creating, in particular, because the podcast episode's about time travel, when you're creating a new time travel novel, where do you start? Do you start with the device, like how they're traveling in time, or do you start somewhere else?
I've usually got the idea of where they're going to travel in time, what the setting's going to be, usually. I mean, it's not every, I have my favorite eras perhaps, but sometimes they're not always. My favorite historical era might not be the one that's most suitable for a story. And I might think, I'm not that interested in writing about that. Or it might be too complicated, to be honest.
What makes it suitable for a story? Can you give us an example?
Well, I think if it's got things in it that in that setting, like the time of the Black Death, I mean, there was stuff there. There's all sorts of dangers in there. And there were all sorts of things I could do with the World War II one that's just come out. And then the Civil War series, the Stone of the Seer series, which I wrote during COVID and put out during COVID. I mean, that's about the English Civil War, where the king lost the war and also lost his head at the end of it. I mean, that was one of my favorite eras when I was studying it at school and everything.
One of your favorite eras is about a beheading. That's very used.
No, it's just that, and I like that, but there's also, you've got to think as well about historical eras that the young readers will find interesting as well. And the medieval era, the Middle Ages and things, lasted for a long time, but they will associate this with knights and castles and swords and all this sort of stuff. And kids, the young readers will be they're familiar with some of this, and they enjoy novels that are set in that era. And sometimes there's a story that I was familiar with. I was familiar with the story of King Edward V, who was 14 years old when he inherited the crown in England, but his nasty uncle decided to put him in the Tower of London because he was only 14 or something like that, seized the crown for himself, and then the young king and his brother were never seen again. And they were known as the Princes in the Tower. And that became my second novel, The Sorcerer's Letterbox, which also became my email address.
I was going to say, the Sorcerer's Letterbox, you still use that, right? And that's
I do. I decided when I opened its
breakout
email
novel.
account, I decided to use it. I mean, why not? And but that brings me on to the device, which was important.
Yeah. Does it matter what you choose? Does it matter?
Well, it has to be plausible. That's the thing. I mean, you can certainly, if you want to, in a kid's story especially, you can certainly simply have somebody deciding, I decided I wanted to travel in time, and then poof, then I was back in another era. Well, no, I wasn't still doesn't do it for me. I mean, in the Sorcerer's Letterbox, there is a letterbox where messages are sent, a scroll is sent back and forth through time with messages asking for help. And it's written in Middle English. And I got I think in the book itself, there's a page where this scrolled the messages. There's a version of it in the book, and I got a copy of that made for to take to school on school visits, so I could show to the kids and all this sort of stuff. It's not in Latin; it's in Middle English. But it was important that seemed plausible. And with the Alchemist portrait, the first one, when he travels in time, the character travels in time. He travels in time through the frames of the painting, but he can only travel because the painting was hanging on the wall in the past. He can't step he can't step through the frame in the modern era and travel, say, to ancient Egypt or ancient Rome or something, because the painting hadn't been painted yet. And also, he will step out of the frame in the location where the frame was located in the past. So that was important. In the one about the Black Death, it's a jewel and everything that can be carried in your pocket. So again, that's important. You've got this thing with you. And so it seems to be plausible. And then if you lose this piece of jewelry, this gemstone, then you're going to be stuck in the past, which is going to be quite terrifying for the reader to think, oh my God, Suzy's going to be trapped in the past because she's lost the gemstone or whatever.
But then you have to find it again, right?
Yeah,
gives them things to do.
Has to be plausible, and it's interesting. Similar to the location one, when I did my paranormal one, the flashback one. In that one, I have somebody touching a gravestone in a cemetery, being haunted by visions of someone who was their imaginary friend when they were growing up, who wanted help from them when they were growing up, but they were too young to understand, and it freaked them out a little bit. But that, again, was touching an object that in a certain place, in a certain location.
And how much time do you spend, Simon? Do you do this? Like, what's your process? Obviously, you've explained that you pick the setting first where they're traveling back to, but then you do spend a lot of time creating rules around, is it plausible? What are the limits? What if they lose it? You've got all these kind of cool things around your device and time travel and how it works. How much time do you spend up front, or do you just kind of write it as it goes? Or do you decide all of that before you start writing?
Well, that's interesting. That's come up recently in the course I'm doing at the university, and it has in recent memory in terms of outlines, because I don't think I had an outline for the first book, The Alchemist Portrait, but I did for I did all the others, and a lot of the time people will think or say to me, "Oh, I can't work like that. I can't have an outline and stick to it," and this, and I tell them, "Well, no, you don't have to stick to it religiously and strictly. It just helps this thing. It helps if you've got a bit of a plan and everything. My current projects like that. I had an outline for it. And then the entire second half of it has changed in recent memory, because I just and the one I put out last year, which was another time travel story, I didn't like. When I finished it, I didn't like it at all, and I thought, I'm never going to put this book out. I don't like it. And then I was out with my walking my dog, and I got some ideas, and I thought, oh, actually, yes, I can change this in places, and I'll quite I quite liked it. So I do have an outline, and then if I have a local coffee shop just up the street from me here, and what I'll do is, again, I have to make sure people understand, and they'll say, oh, you write this with pen and paper, you write the entire book, and I say, no, I'll print off the chapters in the middle that are giving me grief, giving me some problems that I'm stalled on or something, and I'll take them to the coffee shop and work on them and things. And sometimes I'll get a lot of 2 or 3 chapters written by hand over 2 or 3 hours at a coffee shop, and then I have to come home and type them up as quickly as possible, because otherwise I won't be able to read my own writing because I've written them so quickly. But then I realize I've completed those 3 or 4 chapters in the middle that were giving me problems. This latest project was like that. I got stalled with it last winter, left it alone for a while, went back to it, and now it's in decent shape, except for the bit in the middle.
Well, thank you very much, Simon. We'll drop all the links to all of your hundreds of books out there, more than 100 books. So thanks for coming on. You're welcome here anytime.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here. I hope that people have been inspired by it.
Thanks a lot, Simon.
Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Suzy Vidori. Help me continue to bring you the straight goods for that book you're writing or planning to write. Please consider subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Also visit suzyvidori.com/newsletter to hop on my weekly Inspired Writing newsletter list, where you'll stay inspired and be the first to know about upcoming training, events, and writing courses that happen in my community. If you're feeling brave, check the show notes and send us a page of your writing that isn't quite where you want it to be yet for our Show Don't Tell page review episodes. Remember, that book and your writing is going to open doors that you haven't even thought of yet, and I can't wait to help you make it the absolute best. If you're feeling called to write that book, keep going, and I'm going to be right here cheering you on. See you again next week.